the Sphinx. I did not know the Sphinx was so connected to our enlightenment and to ascension. I thought it was just another type of statue at ancient Egypt times, and that was it. I did not know it had so much more of a deeper connection to it.
Me too. I had no idea. And it was funny because when started to work on the second book, I used Jen in the beginning, and we went back to her past life in the 1970s. And then all of a sudden, as she's pulling all this information with the previous hypnotist back in the 1970s and remembering doing this, she realizes that she saw the Sphinx. And there was so much information about the Sphinx. So I guess that's where they wanted the next book to go, because I really had no idea where it was going to go, because I don't write these books, I'm just like a humble messenger. But I didn't know all these things about the Sphinx either. It was amazing because she remembered it being created. She remembered what it was like, how she remembered watching this memory before. So she remembered seeing that they didn't have bodies. They didn't need their physical bodies on the earth at that time because they weren't interacting with humans. And this is a common thing, that if the extraterrestrials that have evolved themselves past needing a body don't need a body, they don't show a body. But oftentimes if they're showing themselves to a human and interacting with a human, they'll show themselves with a body, with a certain way, but they don't have that body on a different planet for some of them.
Yeah, I guess because on other planets, they can be in higher dimensions. From what it seems like.
Right. Like on other planets, they might have a planet of light and they're all light beings. So you wouldn't see them with a body. So it's really interesting. And then there's some quasi-physical beings on certain planets where they're like they sort of have a body still. And it's interesting because that's what we do as a group. We evolve ourselves to a certain point, and then after the planet's done its life cycle, we go to a different planet. So we've all been doing this, and we're all doing it on other planets. We're all these light beings on other planets at the same time as well. It's
right,
really
right. It's kind of like Avatar, but in a way in reverse. Like you live your whole life as an energy being, as a light being, and then you want to experience something different. So you go into the 3D or a human body and to experience this as well, to have this certain experience. So it's kind of like Avatar on a backwards in a way.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. But what was really interesting about uncovering information about the Sphinx was how it was set up here to help us from, well, it was funny when she said, it's all leading to now, basically this is all for now. But I think that since there is no time, I was getting confusing. Since there is no time, it was always leading to the time where we were. But I mean, it was fascinating that this was like a statue that was meant to help us ascend, that we've been planning to do this for eons. People have been talking about this for so long.
Right. And what was cool was, so it seemed like at one point it felt like the whole Sphinx is a record keeper.
Yeah.
More than just like, and because like even when I was reading Dolores Cannon's book, it kind of reminds me that there's a chamber inside the Sphinx or underneath the Sphinx where there's a chamber, but in a way there's a plot twist that the whole thing contains the information with, because I guess like there was crystals inside of the rock, the meteorite and everything. So that was fascinating.
Because what she remembered was that this special energetic rock came from outer space. And because of this special rock, they built the Sphinx on top of this rock, because the rock embedded itself into the ground. And then they built the Sphinx on this rock. because this rock can hold energy. It's like a very special rock. But the Sphinx, that isn't the only place where this type of rock is, where there's things
I
like,
I
but
heard there's 3 locations, if I ain't mistaken.
I don't know if it's only 3, it might be more. I really
Yeah.
don't know. But
I was going to
for
ask you,
this,
like, did they talk about like where's these other locations at?
yeah, and even on different planets. So it's all
Oh,
connected.
okay.
It's like an interconnected radio signaling mechanism. So we can all keep track of one another. And the Sphinx stores and records our history almost like a time capsule. It keeps this energy, this information fresh. So it's never lost. It's like continuously storing and
Mhm.
watching humanity and its evolution. It's really interesting.
So it's not even just 3 locations on Earth, it's other locations throughout the planet.
Right.
I want to, I don't know how often I can get into the juiciest part that made my mouth drop when I read the book at closer to the end, but it kind of answers a lot of questions about so much stuff that we can't figure out. And closer to the end, it's like, oh shoot, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
What was it?
Well, if I could dive into it, but the part where they were saying about how, I'm assuming it's the Greys, the ETs, the Greys. I'm assuming it
Uh-huh.
was them from what it was sounding like in the book, that they've been around for a very, very long time,
Oh,
millions
right.
of years,
Right.
and they look like us. And I was
Yeah.
like, what? And they were doing experiments, advancing in their technology, trying to live forever and extending their life cycles. And then they had to leave their planet and live in space. And it was like, yeah, you will look like this too if you lived in space for millions of years. And I was like,
That was
what?
so fascinating when I forget the name of the person the fake name I gave that client. Oh, right now I'm drawing a blank on
Again,
the
with a
name, but
Y, if I ain't mistaken.
oh, okay. But it was so fascinating that they were saying, yeah, you will look like this if you do this. They are us. That was so fascinating. And
Hmm.
it's like a never-ending figure eight. So they're our future and soon to be our past. And we're
Right,
their future and they are our future. It's like a
right,
never ending, but we're doing things differently. And each time we do things differently, we
right.
change it all, which
And
is
it
really
kind of made
interesting.
sense. They kind of like got out of evolution, not even out of evolution, but they got out of the life cycle.
Oh, you
And
still there?
yeah,
Can you
I
say
think
it again? Sorry, my internet.
it sounded like they wanted to get back into the life cycle, the
Right.
figure eight or whatever.
Mhm.
It seemed like they took themselves out of the loop and they're trying to get themselves back into the loop because they were out of it for so long, and they realized that, yeah, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Now look at us. Because it almost sounds
Right.
like, and you hear this in other books too, like they're more like robots, like biomechanical,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like they're like looked at as parts, you know?
I've been hearing that in sessions that they actually, when they contact a person, they're so robotic that they're almost like using an avatar, so to speak,
Right.
which is interesting. But because they thought it would be more efficient to breed out their emotions, that's what they thought. But because of that, they started to look weak and unhealthy. They realized later that it's all about emotions. Like that's what this is about. But they thought they would be more efficient to just breed it out, be more productive. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, like it's the good and the bad. It's taking both and working with both the negative and the positive,
Right. That's what we
experiencing
need
life,
to do.
you know?
Right. That's what we're supposed to do for this
Yeah.
full experience.
So in your
Yeah.
book, there's a part that says we looked a lot like them and their past.
Right.
So and you hear it before, and I never really truly understood it. Like when they said, "We are you,"
Right.
I'm like, okay, so maybe that's them in the us in the future, something happened. But when you see the big loop that happens, you kind of like, oh, that's what they're trying to say.
Right.
So that
Yeah.
we look like them in their ancient past.
Right.
Now they're
Exactly.
trying to get back into the loop of things, get back into the cycle of life. So,
Right. Because all time is happening now. So there has to be a future version of ourselves.
mhm,
So it makes sense.
right,
But what's interesting is I always thought that grays were scary, that they were, dangerous, but then to find out that they literally are us. And it's
right.
not that way at all.
They're like, yeah, if you lived in space for 1,000,000 years, your arms would be thinner and longer. And that's been
Right.
proven. And like your legs will be thinner and longer. Your skin will look rougher and like leathery and
Right.
lose its color. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess so. You was stuck in space for millions of years,
Right.
you
But
know?
essentially, there is a part of us that is, because I've even had clients that remember being a gray, and they can tap into that part of themselves that's also coming to contact themselves, which is
Right.
super fascinating.
I know. I know. Yes, that's right. Because in the book, I think even you even made the comment inside the book, you like being was examining her and she's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. Oh,
examining myself. It was like that was their agreement that they had, the contract that they had, that, hey, you're going to live as a human, continue this life cycle, help us out. But, I'm also going to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing as well and help you
and
out.
this kept happening. And this still happens. A lot of times I'll have a client who's really afraid of extraterrestrial contact, and they'll come in for a session, and then in the session they'll find out that it's them contacting them, or like a family member or something, but it's
Right.
all
Somebody close to
chosen.
them.
Yeah, but it's chosen by them. And oh my gosh, what's even more mind-blowing is sometimes the person, my client, is creating this embryo, so to speak, for themselves to inhabit when they go to this other planet. I was like, whoa, okay.
Yes, yes. So that was an interesting twist. And so I know we call it the New Earth. I guess there's two versions of the New
There's
Earth.
two, yeah. There might be
So,
multiple, but these are what the ones that
right.
I
So you
heard
got
about.
this version ascending, going to the next level, getting into the next phase of things. And then what was interesting is that it was like, because it was kind of confusing. It was like, because certain stories you would hear, whether it's from QHHT or BQH or whatever sessions, it's like, no, you're going to another planet. It's a
Right.
different planet. And it's like, no, there's no need for another planet. You're staying on this planet. And,
That's why, oh, sorry.
and I was like, well, wait a minute. Are we going somewhere else? Or we're not going somewhere else? Are we staying here and evolving? And in your book, it kind of explains all that. Actually, we're kind of doing both in a way.
Yeah.
Certain individuals have the agreement in their contract to stay here and evolve and experience everything to the end. And then you got others that are going to leave and then go back to this other new earth. But in a way, there's a twist. It's the old earth.
Yes.
So my question to you, did they ever say what planet that was, or where is it at? Like, is it in the Pleiadians by any chance?
No, they never said. And I kept trying to find it. But I think
Hmm.
what's really difficult for these beings is that they themselves don't call it a certain thing that we call it. So it's like, it's kind of like,
We don't have no
I
name
don't,
for
yeah,
it.
yeah, it's different, So, but I want to find out now. But that's one of the reasons why I wanted to find that information, because I was really confused, because before there were so many people saying, oh, everybody's going to leave on spaceships and stuff like that. And then people were like, no, you're going to stay. And so as I was uncovering this information, it made sense. And I was also a little bit shocked and relieved that there's two choices, or probably multiple,
And it
but
would make sense, like for that individual, to like when they say no, you're going to stay, they're probably talking about that individual. like
Right,
like no,
exactly.
you're going to stay. Then when another person's under hypnosis, no, you're going to leave.
Right. It
So
was so
that's why I was like, well,
confusing.
wait a minute, which is which?
Right. And the people that feel really strongly that they're going to leave and go to a different planet, they probably are right. They probably know it. They're not being wrong or anything. They just instinctually know that. But for the other people, it makes sense. They're going to be staying on this earth. And they're both great choices, but it's something you made before you came in. What was really interesting is so many people that see the home planet or that new earth that they're seeing that used to be the old earth, they get so emotional when they visit that planet. And I know even Dolores had that happen when people remembered the home planet because it's really in so many of our DNA and our essence to want to go back to that home planet. I think we miss it, but we had to wait till it regenerated and
Yeah,
we could match the frequency.
it kind of like it was at its end of its life cycle from what it sounded
Right.
like, and now it's being, since it's been a long time, it's being rejuvenated from what it sounded like.
I wonder if that's what happened to Earth. I have no idea, but it would be interesting to find out because I guess that could be, it's almost like a field, you grow a crop and then it die or you harvest it and you have
Hmm.
to let the land, recuperate. I wonder if that happens to a lot of planets that we inhabit, if that's what we do, because, you know, some of these planets are perfect for this experiment, so to speak.
Yeah. Did they ever say what happened to that planet? I don't remember if they said
They
exactly
said
what
it,
happened.
it, they said it went through its whole life cycle.
Okay.
That it was done its life cycle because the planets are alive and they have their own personality and consciousness. And then that planet had to recover, had to regenerate and kind of start anew. But it's different when they talk about that new Earth, they don't describe it as a planet. It's weird. They describe it as a new world. Like it's different. It's really hard to get too much
Maybe because it's more than
physical,
one. I know they talk about more
possibly,
than one.
right,
Another planet that was
possibly.
close to it, like you can see it, and from what the book was saying, that you can see it from their
Oh, the
planet.
red planet and the blue
Yeah,
planet.
the other. So maybe it's
Yeah,
just more than just that one planet.
maybe. It's really interesting because so, many, not even just Jen, but so many of my clients during the time I was uncovering this with Jen would talk about remembering from a past life being an extraterrestrial, looking up at these two planets from their planet. I bet so many of us have these memories in our subconscious. So many of us feel that desire to go back home.
Now,
That's
if I ain't
interesting.
mistaken, from one of your videos, you think you're from there? Because I thought
I
when you had your video with Alba, I think you was from Sirius, if I ain't mistaken.
um there was like a being or something that or a group of beings that call themselves a seraphim.
I remember that. That was like
Yeah,
angels, correct?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't remember that much without a session. But recently I did a regression and I found myself on a different planet that was pink. It had like a kind of like a sunset pink and it was beautiful. It looked like I don't really know how to describe it. Kind of like mountainous, but no grass, just beautiful sunset. And then the beings I can remember really clearly. They were tall and whitish, but they had these large heads and really big black eyes. And they were very compassionate. I remember just all you feel is love, when you're there. And then I told them I'm going to Earth to teach humanity compassion.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
When
and
did
I
that
got in this.
happen? When did that session
Um,
happen?
I was going on a trip with my family and I was bored in the car. So I literally made myself a little regression. And I thought, oh, it's probably too loud in here. Nothing's going to happen. and I was blown away. It was one of the most vivid sessions I've ever had. Like, it was so real that I don't think I'll ever forget the images. They were so real and vivid. And I got into this like travel sphere. I could still picture it. It was amazing. I got into
Wow.
it.
And you did all that by yourself?
Yeah. Well, I came out of it and then that was it. But it was really interesting because it was so it was, I don't know, kind of changed my life a little bit because I was thinking maybe this is what I'm doing here. This kind of makes sense. But yeah.
That's interesting. So that means you've been gone for a very long time from your planet.
I guess so. I guess so.
So
Yeah.
what was the sphere like? Was it like an energy ball or something?
Well, it was clear, like I could see out of it because I remember getting into it and then my controls, of course, I knew how to use them. They're very thought powered. It was a very light planet. So there wasn't that much density at all. I don't think we walked, like just kind of float. It was very light and airy and thought based. And it was interesting because I could power everything in the ship with my mind. So I had these controls that were not like fully physical controls, and they were floating, like they were stationary, but up in the air. So I could, and then I remember there was like a star map, that came
Ah,
up, and it was
that's
interesting.
cool.
I knew exactly. Don't ask me how to do that now.
So Sarah, tell me more about this.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
Have to go back
that's
into
pretty
it.
cool. You're able to put yourself in that hypnosis state. So maybe one day you can get some questions together or a topic. You're like, hey, Jason, I need you to help me out with this. I need to
Yeah,
get
let's do it.
information, and you can go under and I can just actually this information
Yeah,
and these questions that you need.
that would be fantastic. I've actually done that a couple times and found some great information. I think it's
Nice.
easy,
Get a whole
you
YouTube
know,
video out of it.
yeah, I think it's easy to put yourself. I know what works really well for me to put myself under. So, I mean, I can definitely do that. Or you can just put me under.
Gotcha. Yay. So before we go into some of the questions, have you been able to get more information? I know you're working on a third book, but has the information still been coming through or?
It's still coming through, but once it started to seem obvious that the third book was taking its form, kind of, so to speak, I've been bombarded with clients that match this book. It's so
What a
strange.
coincidence, right?
I mean, I feel like these coincidences always show up in a subtle way. So it makes you question them. I don't know. I mean, that's just how it seems to be for me. It shows up, it seems a little subtle, but then when you really look into it and you notice the coincidences, it's profound. Just like writing any of these books, everything set up, but it doesn't seem that obvious right away when I'm putting it together until later. It's a while.
Now, once when you have an idea of like which way the book is going, do you have to go back and like remove stuff or remove certain things to make
Yeah,
it kind of like fit the direction that it's
yeah,
going into?
I don't know how Dolores, now I have more of an idea of how difficult, because there's so much material and so much of it is like mind blowing. Like I have so much material, I probably could just make a fourth book or third book, third book with it. But it does, I was trying to keep it in some sort of regular topic, otherwise it'd be all over the place.
Hmm.
So, I mean, who knows? I probably should put it all together because it's so interesting. There's just so much information. I feel like right now is a really great time to find out this information, because I feel like, especially with this light that's bombarding the planet and healing the planet, it helps us touch, go deeper into all of this information, I found that seems very easy to really go deeper and further into information than it was before. Also, the information is more accessible. I think when people tried to get this information like in the 70s or, around that time period, it was more difficult because there were more blocks on the subconscious. Now we're not as limited with those blocks. I feel like this is such an exciting time that I'm sure I will uncover our history and figure it out so that we can all understand who we really are, why we're here, and
Absolutely.
understand ourselves better.
Yeah, yeah. One of the questions I did have when I was reading the book, from what it sounds like, so if the Greys, these ETs, if they've been around for a very, very long time, it sounds like they even seeded and went through this whole process with Jin's old planet when she was a commander on that planet. So do
I'm
you,
not sure if they seeded her or not,
okay. That
because
was like one of the questions I was wondering.
Jen, every time I would do a session with Jen and ask about the planet, it was constantly the Pleiades
Okay,
star system. So I never got that she was, it was a gray related.
gotcha. Because the only reason why I asked is like, what would be the odds that they've been around for a very, very long time, and then Earth comes around, it's like, hey guys, let's start with this project all over again. And then because
Right.
the reason why I bring that up, because in Jin's session on that planet as a commander, they kind of look like human beings as well.
Right.
So that's why I was like wondering, I was like, well, what if they helped out on that planet and then left those, the Sphinx or the spheres with information, and then they continued on the process and went on to other planets and found Earth as well, and then kind of like started with the whole life process on
What if
Earth.
it's all the same? What if they're all the same, just little different versions of one
Exactly.
another?
Right, right. And that's what I was wondering, if you had any information about that, like if that was
Well,
the case.
well, I'm sure it must be because the deeper you go into this information, the more it just leads to one, to one thing that we're all this thing that we've just split apart and just tried to have experiences as separate. But really, when anybody in a session leaves their earthly body, they always call themselves as we because they are, gaining back that oneness, So yeah, but it just seemed as if the reason why the Pleiadians came to Earth was because they were running out of this special resource. And they used it almost like what I found fascinating, like in my hypnotist journey to Atlantis, was
Hmm.
they used it almost like an addiction. They needed these crystals because they would use it to enlighten their people. And so they were
Yes.
running out of this resource. And it was interesting because it's interesting that they needed something else to keep this enlightenment going. And so
Yes,
they,
in a way, and it was pretty cool because they would use these red crystals not only for like technology purposes, but
right.
also opening up a portal for them to ascend into it, be enlightened, and then come back. And then they're like a more smart, more intelligent, more like I have a better understanding of life and
Yeah,
awareness.
it was so fascinating because everybody had to do it at least once. Everyone had to go through this vortex. And by going through it, you would have your sense like shocked into you, all of
God,
a sudden you would realize you're everything around you. You would learn the secrets of the universe.
that's very, very interesting. So everybody had to do it at least once to go through this
Mhm.
process, right?
Because
That's
it would remove insecurity. And
perfect.
so once you remove insecurity, there's no need for war.
God.
Everybody would be harmonious with one another. It's
Look,
really interesting.
the reason why I asked that, like, there's no coincidence. So in Guardians of Magic, so there's a process. I don't think it's in the book in these two books, but there's a process where they have to go through enlightenment. but it dealt with
Wow.
these crystals, not red crystals, because I didn't know about them. I put that to the side for a different purpose for the red crystals, but they had to go through this process of enlightenment. But when they did this, they got their special powers, their special abilities, and everything. They were smarter, wiser. So that's kind of interesting. I just realized it too.
There's so many similarities.
Hmm.
I think this information, these memories are stored within people's subconscious. And that's another thing that I think is so interesting because when I'm uncovering these memories, they're memories. When the person is in hypnosis and recalling their past, they're actual memories of being an extraterrestrial and understanding what it's like to be on a different planet and living on a different planet is really fascinating. It gives extraterrestrials a whole new like a voice, I feel
Yeah,
like, because they are us, literally.
right. And and look, for me, I'm not even gonna lie. When I even started reading Dolores, I think that it was around that time, Dolores Cannon's book. It was kind of like, in my mind, human beings were only here on Earth. We evolved on Earth and stuff like that. And I
Right.
remember reading Dolores Cannon's book, and then one of her questions is, "What do they look like, on this other planet? These beings and so on." And she goes, "Well, it's funny. They look like us." What do you mean?
Right.
Well, they're humans. They're like us. And
Right.
so in my mind, I'm like, what? I'm like, wait a minute. So, and this was years ago, years ago. So I'm like, wait a minute. How can they look like us? Is that how the process works? That human life evolves and, we wind up looking like humans on, same thing will happen on planets, but with them getting involved, it kind of makes sense where they're continuing the life cycle and going from planet to planet and
Right.
continuing the cycle of eight, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that was one.
But
And then like the grays, like when it was like, oh, we are you and you are us, I'm like, wait, how can that be? You don't look
I
nothing
know.
like us.
But if you think about it, they kind of do. And that's what we would look like if we lived in space
Right.
and we were like that for the millennia. But I still would love to know what the beginning was. I mean, when I was trying to uncover the beginning, I only got that little bit in the hypnotist journey to Atlantis about, it was done out of need, out of lack, that they started this grand, never ending experiment out of loss. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, like they wanted to experience everything, right? Is that what it
Yeah,
was?
well, they wanted to experience something. They started with feeling a lack, like feeling a nothingness. So that's why it started. But then it has no start. So how does that work? I guess it's
You're
all
like,
because of the never ending figure
how's this
eight,
gonna work? There had to be some kind of beginning.
right?
Well, hopefully they're excited now. We got Instagram, Facebook, we got YouTube now. So hopefully there's a lot of entertainment.
Yeah,
There's
I know.
plenty.
Right. I think they lock their doors when they drive by Earth right now.
Lock the doors. With that being said, for the people watching this video, so I had a session with video collaboration with Tracy yesterday, and she brought up how enlightenment or the great awakening is connected to the hybrid children. And so in
Oh,
your book with the Sphinx and everything goes into the hybrid children. Was there anything else that came through? Like it sounded like for the hybrid children is for both planets from what it sounded like. So it's for this planet and it's also for the other planet that's being seeded. If
right.
I'm not mistaken, if you can confirm, but there are already people on this other planet.
That's what I heard from multiple clients who don't know one another because I was having these women come in who were post-menopausal and they claimed they felt pregnant and they had been experiencing what felt like pregnancies. And so they
Hmm.
went to their OBGYN and they couldn't find anything. They were, fine. They said, oh, it's something that has to do with menopause, but they were already past menopause. None of it made any sense. And it turned out their subconscious said that they are, in fact, pregnant. that they're part of the seeding program, and it's easier to hide amongst older women. I know, sorry, I know you're a man, but they were like experiencing like heavy bleeding, like all kinds of weird issues all of a sudden that
Right,
didn't make any sense.
like they were about to have a child or they already had a child, correct?
Right. But they were like in their 60s and they had
Oh, wow.
passed menopause. None of it made any sense. And the subconscious said, yes, they're they're seeding a different planet. It's just easier to hide this pregnancy in a woman that no one would suspect would ever be pregnant. But it's something they
Ah,
agreed upon. And what they were seeding was this other planet, this new Earth, or the current, planet with the new children that are coming in with disabilities, but disabilities really, for a lot of them, are major abilities. And that's what we didn't understand about Atlantis. Like the children that were born with disabilities actually had these amazing abilities because of but it was,
right,
circumstances then.
right.
But
But once when they found out those special abilities, they used it to their advantage.
exactly. Exactly. But that we've always, it sounds like we've always had hybrid children, because Jen remembered going back to the beginning of this planet this time around, and she kept going back to Antarctica and seeing the children that they had been seeding, and it was such a happy time on Antarctica at the time. And there was so much hope and so much joy because these children brought so much joy, like they were growing something, so to speak, and they were doing it. And they did all this so that they themselves could inhabit these bodies. It was so interesting because I guess that's what we do when we go to a different planet. We have to make sure we can inhabit the body and have this 3D physical reality, if it's a third dimensional reality.
Yeah, in your book, I was very happy to see that you was talking about Antarctica, because a lot of people assume Atlantis was in Antarctica. But in your books, it's kind of like the other way around. Atlantis was in the Atlantic Ocean, and for Antarctica was just kind of like a home base for these ET individuals.
It was basically like one of the first home bases. It seemed like in the very beginning, before, when Atlantis was a beautiful place,
Right.
like very early beginning, they had Atlantis, that huge continent, and Antarctica. And those were like all the bases, basically. And
Got it.
there's so many of so many different things buried under the ice there. If someone were to find it, they would be, it would be really difficult to explain.
It kind of is interesting if, it kind of explains why there's so many scientific research facilities down there too. So they're not just down there looking at ice.
Right.
You know what I
I
mean?
mean,
That's a lot of money to look at ice. But
there's so much. Yeah.
So, and when you was talking about the hybrids and that they're at this other planet as well. So I'm like, is this one of those trick questions where time doesn't exist and is there now? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
was
no.
there, not right now, but they go fast forward into the future, with their technology, and they're like, okay, we're here.
Well, it's interesting because some of the mothers that came in for their session, these women that were postmenopausal, their subconscious would show them, oh, this is where, your children are, and it's on this new Earth. And then, they would, to meet up with them, if they were able to handle this, they would meet in a ship a lot of the time.
Right.
Because there's a really special energy you have to have in order to go to this other planet, new Earth, because they don't want their experiment to be tainted over there.
Gotcha. That was going to be one of my questions, like why not just humans from Earth? Why hybrid children?
Because they have to match this very special frequency, and they don't want what happened on Earth to happen over there with the fear virus. So
Gotcha.
there's like a lot of precaution going on. And that's why the women that partake in this hybridization program are very special. A lot of them seem to have really interesting abilities that they weren't aware of before. So it's interesting.
Yes, yes. Because the other thing that, when I was talking to Tracy and they were bringing up the hybrid children, and then that's going to be, how that great awakening is many different pieces. Well, that's one of the pieces right there. So I was like, that's kind of odd. I was kind of throwing around the idea, and then I'm like reading my notes. I'm like, it says right here on my notes, X hybrid children, ask Sarah about it, a little bit more information. I'm like,
It's funny.
Daniel, were you reading my notes?
Probably.
So, and I was, and I already interviewed Geraldine on New Earth versus New World Order, and she's part of the hybrid program with her children. So I'm like,
Right.
and I asked Daniel, I'm like, should I create a new series that talks about the hybrid children? Because it seems like it's getting, especially from your book, it's getting more and more information, and the layers is getting deeper and deeper,
And it would be great for these women to know that they're not crazy, because they would think they were, and they would come in and be so sure of it because the doctor said, oh, there's nothing going on here, but their subconscious said a lot otherwise.
Right. So with that being said, would you be interested in this series that I'm going to create?
Definitely.
Wow.
Whatever I can do to help.
Let me
I
know.
know a woman that was postmenopausal that experienced a pregnancy that probably wouldn't mind talking about it.
Okay, perfect. I love it when a plan comes together. So with everything, before we get into more of the ancient Egypt stuff and three and Toth or Toth, however, before we get into that, was there anything else that you kind of noticing that you're getting from sessions that kind of like deals with the present or the future of what's going on?
Yeah, so it was really interesting because, a lot of times I'm really just curious. I was curious if we were doing okay, like if we're moving in the right direction, because sometimes you look around and it doesn't look like
You're
it.
like, war is
Yeah,
going on,
right.
prices are getting high. What's going on,
Yeah,
people?
yeah, I know. Clients that had never met, who had no idea of anybody else's session, would say the same things over and over again. I felt like that really validated everything, that no, we're moving in the right direction. Everything's right on track. Fantastic. Everybody's happy about this. And we're just doing fantastically. And also, there's this light that's blanketing our planet. I mean, we have so much help right now. So, Earth has no choice but to ascend. There's no choice at this point, basically. It's happening.
Gotcha. And I love the part where, it's kind of like a birthing, giving
Yeah,
birth, there's going to be pain, there's going to be discomfort and everything, but we
right.
have to go through it. I guess on one hand, what's your opinion about this? Like, why would you have to, go through all this roughness and madness? Does it deal with karma? Does it deal with something? Or is it like, hey, let's, on one hand, I kind of feel like it has to be as natural as possible for the collective. Like,
Right.
yeah, all this is happening because of this war, this battle, this situation right here, and it leads to the next, instead of
Right.
like something happening. I was like, whoa, why did that just happen? Why
Yeah.
was there this light? Why was this? What's up with these spaceships? You know what I mean? So
Right. I think it's just a natural process. I mean, that's how humans usually learn. I mean, we usually learn by having to learn, like there's no choice. And I think it's just like how the COVID situation really helped so many people kind of take a step back and start to question things they had been told. It's just like that. I feel everything that's happening right now is just an opportunity to really figure out what you yourself really believe, and that's how we learn. It's like anything in your life, you maybe like have a job that you just hate and you get fired, but you're devastated about it, but you needed to get fired in order to get
Because
this
if
other
not, you're not
job.
going to leave.
Yeah. And it's like right now we're in that, chaotic time, but it's going to lead to something so amazing, they say. So that's exciting.
It was pretty cool that Dolores Cannon came through one of your sessions and everything. I was like, oh, look at this. This is so cool. Because
I
in
was
a,
really excited.
because in a way, it was like, I'm reading your book and I'm like, and I'll get to the next part of it too, but I'm reading your book and I'm like, man, it really does feel like, I'm reading one of the books from Dolores Cannon's, the questions, the answers, the information that's coming through the books is like, wow, this is pretty good stuff. Like, I couldn't stop reading it, even though I can only read so much. I usually read before I go to sleep in like an hour's worth, and then I was taking notes from it, highlighting different things. So, and then when Dolores Cannon came through and they're like, yeah, we're so proud of you. And, and I'm like, oh, look at this. Yeah.
I
It
know.
really, and then how Jen said that we're continuing her work and stuff. And, and I would remember your older videos where you would like asking her questions like, can I help you write into your books? And she's like, well, I already wrote my books.
Yeah.
You got to write your own books. And then next thing you know, you're writing books and she's helping you. So that was very, very interesting and pretty cool. And then from my side of it, I'm like, what are the odds that, I go down this journey to get more information about Atlantis, ancient times, ancient Egypt, and so on, to look for this information. And you write these books. I meet you at level 2, the QHHT class, and I recognize you from one of your hypnosis videos. And next thing you know, you providing all this great information. And I'm like, shoot, the plot thickens. There's so much even more information. I'm like, man, I'm going to have to continue bumping up these stories. I'm like,
yeah,
how do
there you go.
how am I going to connect all these little dots? I'm like, some of it's going to get cut out because it's so much.
I know what you mean,
Like, how
but
do I
there's no
connect all these little
coincidence.
stories?
It's interesting because there's just no coincidences.
With you, you're able to get all this information. You're able to meet with all these clients and have repeatable sessions. Whereas, with me, I can't really do that because I work during the day. So by the time the weekend comes, I have to do like honeydews and stuff.
Right.
So it's like, I have to like find a way to have my little sessions with my clients. And I love it when I see the connectivity between the two as well. But I'm like, but with your books, it's like, wow, that was a lot of great information coming through,
Oh, thank you. I mean, I didn't write it, but
yeah. So, the ETs wrote it. What the alien hybrids look like by any chance?
the ones that are on this other planet, they look like a cross between extraterrestrial with the silvery blonde hair. This is for the Pleiadian ones. They look like a mixture. You can see that they're very angelic, very wise, and very kind. And you can see that in their eyes, apparently.
We're almost to that time, that cutoff time. Thank you very much, Sarah. And if you're watching this video, anything that deals with the ancient Egypt or Sphinx or Thoth or Thoth or 3 is going to be on Guardians of Magic. And then all the Enlightenment and hybrid program is going to be on Q.R.E. network. So if you're watching this video, the whole video is going to be on Guardians of Magic. Sarah, was there anything else you would like to share with everybody?
Oh, no, but thank you so much, Jason. It was such a pleasure, like always fun and talk to you.
Thank you very much. And I'll send you that invitation once when I get the ball rolling on the hybrid children program and get that going.
Thank you.
Well, I want everybody to have a good night and take care and make sure you subscribe. So when I get that next video with Sarah, the next episode series, it'll be all taken care of and you'll be aware of it.
Thanks, Jason. That was awesome.